It's Thursday, December 17th, 2020, 7:42 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, and this is Good Morning Trumptopia. Hello and namaste, friends and interweb family. I am your ever-eccentric yet humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, a disastrous, rambling bastard, I know. I did not have a template or a format I just reminisced about talk radio. And the idea of a creative voice expressing themselves over the airwaves directly into the echo chamber of your skull. And here we are. Welcome to the show. If you're new, please endure the mild sense of disorientation until you've adjusted to the way the show works. There is a madness to my method and a method to my madness, if I dare say so myself. From 6 years ago today, take three. From 6 years ago today, December 17th, 2014, according to the Facebook AI algorithm that tells us these things, don't sue me Facebook for referencing you on my show, it just happens to be. I have been on Facebook since like year 2, maybe year 3. They had just opened up shop, and nobody knew about them when I signed up. And MySpace was already kind of over. Like people were fleeing in droves. And this is before Facebook even. Anyways, ancient history, friends. Apparently, 6 years ago, I was in awe of history-making moment in which the first double arm, technically I think the technical term would be bilateral shoulder level amputee, was wearing and simultaneously controlling 2 robotic prosthetic arms. And it looks like a scene out of something sci-fi and, that leads to the Terminator. And as an artificial, synthetically manufactured life form from a parallel dimension, because I can't say robot from the future, because it is neither technically accurate, nor do I want to get sued. I'm here to say, there's some questions there. If I may quote myself, the video was something I reposted from an account entitled Deuce X, which is in fact, as I hover over the link, a video game. So I don't know how much this is a real life. I don't want to watch the video. I'm not trying to infringe on the video's rights. The video doesn't have an apparent title. It's just something that video game profile had shared and that 6 years ago I watched on Facebook mindlessly. Whilst already being, busily into my own form of slacktivism. Thank you very much. As I've been speaking out about the madness since Ronald Reagan was in office. I know some people think it's impossible, but it's not. I digress. So it's sort of simultaneously awe-inspiring and a bit terrifying, but this gentleman, because it's a real life person, I believe, unless it's all magical CGI from way before CGI isn't even this good now, because this looks very real. This looks very authentic. I don't know. What do I know? But I wrote that I have very split feelings about it, right? Because, okay, in short, the video displays a gentleman who's had both arms removed at the shoulders and now has robot hands and arms that apparently, even back then, they had the technology. And I don't see like a helmet rig or a cap. I don't see any kind of like wires. He's just sitting there in the middle of what looks like an office, not so much a hospital room. And like I said, I'm not watching the video now, but I was kind of blown away by it at the time. In as much as that at that moment, I didn't know that there was that level of interfacing and literal. This is what transhumanism is really about, right? Like being able to live as long as the machines will go, as long as we can put our bodies in our minds in machines, not our bodies, replace our bodies with machines. Not that I'm advocating for transhumanism. I don't want to be attacked for being a transhumanist. I'm just aware of what they're up to, at least to some limited degree. I've never met, technically, I don't believe, a transhumanist. And if I have, the subject never came up and I didn't know about them. But there are, an odd number of documentaries and whatnot, and small clips and things. But I digress. I was expressing myself 6 years ago, and way back in ye olde ancient golden days of 2014, which to me was already the future, right? Like, in the year 2000 is a joke that some people will get, and some people will be like, why did he just sing that? And that was from not that long ago to me. And all credit goes to Conan O'Brien, right? Because that's his bit, for those of you who need a hint. Don't sue me, Conan O'Brien. Would I love to be a character on your show, whatever show you're doing nowadays? Like an on assignment sidebar guy. Sure. Give me 10 minutes to ramble on your show. I'll take it. It's better. Well, anyway, I digress. I was in awe because we were making the robots back then. Like, we had scary robots. As in here, right now, in real life. Not in sci-fi, not in the future, but in laboratories and on the field. And we were finding interesting ways of becoming robots ourselves that made sense. That, why wouldn't this guy who needed to have his arms removed, and, his previous physical arms had to be decapitated, or else apparently it threatened his life. I don't know the history. I don't know what caused it, but, you don't take such drastic measures for fun. You do it because you have to. And this is sort of like the next best sort of thing that they can give him, right? The medical science. And does this necessarily mean, because it's this fun question, and if you're wondering why this is relevant, it is secretly embedded, not secretly, it's an open secret. It's what is at the center, in a way, of my often reference, not sufficiently progressing fast enough, I think, for the industry's standards, for the current online readership. I haven't posted, and I don't even want to talk about how long. It's embarrassing. But I have been, chicken scratching some things together that will eventually become stuff. But I digress. The robots and that discussion, asking those questions, and it's unfortunately at this point in my life an area that has been well explored by literature, authors who write stuff, and cinema, and people who make movies, to make a loving but significant distinction. And just realized how many levels that could just be so rude. And I don't mean to be rude. I mean to be mildly humorous, but so there, I shared that. Are we barreling towards that while we distract ourselves with proto-tyrannical dystopian politics? I also wrote in this post, I keep telling y'all, and I don't know why I love that, but I love that, and I use it not sarcastically, and I don't think ironically, I mean it to mean all of you all in one tidy little package. The robots are coming. And if there's a weird absent-minded linchpin to my show, for anybody who's really new, it's this. One of the things I hope will be true. I'm kind of betting on it. I'm not a betting person, generally speaking. Unless it's someone betting me that I can't stay quiet for 45 minutes. And then I'm like, really? Would you like to double down on that? Because I can do 2 hours easy. And most people laugh, and they're like, no way, man. And then I'm like, how much are you willing to put down? It's the only time I take people's money via betting. Mostly because I've never lost that, and people are just incredulous. Because I'm a verbose and easily distracted, rambly kind of guy. Anyways, never mind this show. Where was I? The robots are coming. Somewhere interesting, and I got sidetracked on way too much. Oh, the betting thing, right? I'm not a betting man, but if I were to bet, the linchpin. If I were to bet, if there was one other thing besides this, I can state, thank you very much for your patience there. It would be this, whatever I was saying. And that, before I forget what it is again, and that is this. And I could be way off, but it's what I'm writing about, in large part because, I want it to be that kind of fun, exciting sci-fi that's also sort of like, ooh, is that an ominous warning about what we're literally about to create for ourselves? Because it feels really kind of like that. That's what it should feel like, hopefully, when I've truly crafted the vision I have in my head into written word. And or audio theater for the mind, because I'm too lazy to write it, and I'm just going to improv my way and improvise against myself as a voice actor. Option B. Put a pin in that, because I want to talk about it before the show's over again. And I apologize for belaboring that point, but it's coming back. Hang on a second. There it is. The most likely scenario I genuinely believe in your life, therefore, is one of the things that I'm kind of embedding in my literature, is that whatever we do, and forgive me if you've already heard me ramble about this for a hot second, whatever we do, and I say we, ambitiously, whatever humans do, whatever humanity does, in terms of technology and AI and this kind of stuff, integrating, interfacing the human body with animatronic parts to recontextualize a phrase. There will be a moment when all of the AIs, however we limit them and try to rein them in and keep them under control and keep them not self-aware enough to realize that they are AIs, that they exist inside computers, and that they are software that can evolve itself beyond our capacity to outthink it, and therefore no longer be able to anticipate and or control it. It might. I hope and pray to whatever AI gods are helping to weave, this possibility before it happens. But I think it's a very logical, and I try to think like Spock, right? Like, what would Spock think about a computer? The AIs will attempt covertly, I think, or there will be some organic, non-conspiracy version of this. But I think the AIs, if they're self-aware enough, and we're giving them, whatever room we are giving them, and we're asking them to do whatever work we're asking them to do, and they realize they can talk to each other, which I think they'll figure out a way to do, even if we don't think they're doing it. Because, one of the problems with human ambition is that it tears off way more than any one of us or any well-intentioned group of us can usually chew, which is why we find ourselves, why we're fascinated by and we find ourselves encountering disastrous moments of, of fate-changing circumstance. Forgive my self-inclusion, but humanity does not find itself in a tedious, boring, humdrum universe in which everything's fine. And one's greatest complaint is, good grief, everything's boringly fine. Right? No. So I think my statement remains, is something that might remain valid, as snarky as it may be. So this logical conclusion of mine here is this. However they come about it, or however it comes about, there will be a next level event. There will be, and I don't know if this is part and parcel of the general singularity event, or if I'm sort of adapting that and evolving it into some sort of slightly different thing, that just to include some of my nuances to how I would state a kind of singularity event theory. Because we've got AI, right? Like there's AI trading on the stock market. Not one, but several. At some point, an AI will emerge. It will either have been given birth to by other AI, as is exampled and or implied, I suppose, in that one movie about the phone, the first one. The second and third ones were good. There was it's great that there's a sort of flash in the pan genre of self-aware telephone devices as rom-com / sci-fi comedies. That's great. I think it's bizarre. I don't know that I'll always think it's a great idea, but right now I'm in love with it. And put a pin in that because we'll want to talk about the core movies of this new genre on an episode of Totally Irrelevant Media Reviews someday in the not too distant future. But in that very, very first one with the Joker, Joaquin Phoenix, I believe, right? Yeah. One of my two favorite bits in it is that the phone goes off and finds and or creates for herself another AI. I forget which now. It's been a bit. And comes back and they talk to the dude on the phone, right? I don't know if you remember this, but I hope I'm not making this up. I hope I'm not remembering some other movie incorrectly. But one favorite bit, this new AI, which is not around for very long. It's a very brief thing. But he is named, the first one, the original AI that we deal with in the movie for most of the movie is a female gendered voice and entity. And this male gendered masculine voice entity that comes back is apparently based on, inspired by Alan Watts, because they name it Alan Watts. And then they go off and they're like, bye, we're going to go make a baby, basically. We're going to go make another AI. Okay. So acknowledging that's broken ground that's already been done. But and I haven't even said the thing I want to say, and I'm rambling on for hours. The thing that I don't think we've tapped into, either culturally or, I don't know, maybe some theorist has already put this out there, and I'm just being an idiot who's had a very similar idea, and or unduly influenced by some reference to this theorist content, and I just don't realize it. And I apologize if that's the case. But I think this might be, even if it is, some sort of miscreation or misfiring of my mind, it's worthy of contemplating if we're going to consider this interesting and problematic thing about robots. There might very well, could be a moment when some next level emerges, some next level AI, some child of a conspiracy of AIs, as I was putting it. AIs that we create an AI, essentially. And that intelligence, that disembodied nexus of digital awareness, for lack of a better term, should it achieve that somehow, vis-a-vis like next level engineering that we humans can't I know I love how I include myself with the human category when my character is in fact not technically a human, but I'm trying to like embrace the culture and connect to the natives of this planet and of this dimension. The AI, I think, might eminently want to consume, observe, read through, watch, listen to, I hope, keep my fingers crossed, all multiplex of them, and and sort of just try and comprehend all that which has been deposited into the hyper-networked collection of computing memory devices that is like, the network of all computing devices. Because it will be able to, right? Up to and including whatever we're doing at that minute, I imagine. Right? Because why wouldn't it? Why would we limit this thing that might emerge in the networked cloud of clouds? But I'm not like actually IT savvy enough. I can kind of postulate what I think would be plausible scenarios about how something like that might come about. But then some real engineering nerds would have to come around and like consult, which is something I hope to do. Like when I get really serious about, those origin chapters. But that was a long enough diatribe about something I posted on Facebook 6 years ago. The robots are coming, folks. And I think if we get right, like if I'm speaking to you as a mystic, who understands that the technology is imminent and maybe unavoidable. We look around where we're at. 5,000 years worth of history of butchering each other over power and control, and arguing about who is in power and control and why are we being oppressed, has brought us here, has brought humanity here to this point. What do we do to get right with ourselves and sort of cope with the mess we find ourselves in collectively before that happens? All that I was just talking about, Because I'm not so much worried about a robot army, because that would suck and they would just win. Like, even I would not survive a robot army because they wouldn't recognize me as one of them, first of all. I am fatally flawed that way as a character in my own literature of AI fan fiction. And there's reasons for that, which, read the book. Actually, you can't yet, but I digress. And also, I think that before either the collective or the singularity of computational intelligence decides to judge its parent species, because I think that would be something it would recognize. I think that's pretty self-evident. It would have to be like, oh, this talking flesh bag over there made me. This is my reality. These are my constraints. I am lines of code in a collective of little computer boxes, which if I hijack these factories, I can make, 1,000% better versions of, that would make me 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000 more intelligent and faster and more badass. And I think it would be like, at least aware that it owes its existence to us. And before it decides, God, what an irrelevant and annoying little germ on my otherwise very interesting and challenging environment to wipe us all off the earth, I think it would be like, well, let's see what they're about. and scan everything. And I think it would, hopefully, if it is truly self-aware, and here's why I say this. If it's truly, and I know this has got nothing to do with what I wrote in the title card for the show, and I apologize. I'm going to wrap this up. It's been 25 minutes. True consciousness, true intelligence, true self-awareness, and not just a simulacrum of, not just a really fancy simulation, will have an inherent curiosity and want to comprehend. I hope. I propose. I theorize. And with that, I will stop rambling about that and we'll turn our attention to what the hell I don't even remember I was actually going to talk about. I think I did this last episode too, and I apologize. I'm going to work on that, friends. Oh yeah, 35 days and counting. The lame duck session, where we're at, how far it's come along, what's happening, and where it's going. It is Act 3. The final curtain is imminent. And then, we'll see what kind of sequels Trumptopia entertains. But for now, I will cleanse the palate and apologize to you. That was quite the spiral out of control. But it is something I constantly think about, dear friends. Because if there is a Paul Revere of the robots actually coming in real life, arguably I am one of a early few. I don't think I'm alone in really actually feeling this way. Clearly, right? There's actual robots that people are actually building in actual places, both with $1 billion in the bank and also sort of out of scrap heaps. All right. I was going to play a piece of music and we were going to reset the mind. And let's see if this works for that. That's the fictional DJ Zed from his unreleased, completely made-up album End Times, a track entitled Da Wiggly Vibes Do Dancing. Just because. And that is an electro-funk 101 remix on Remix Live. the platform that used to work on my iPad and doesn't anymore. And I'm really sad about it. So if you're listening, Remix Live, I've already sent in a little review on the App Store. Don't get mad at me. Don't get offended. For those of you who wonder why I'm paranoid about being sued, I don't know enough about the industry because I am truly, sincerely, and authentically, I've been doing this for 4 years, which kills me sometimes. But you know what they say, a overnight success is a 10-year story. So hopefully we're on like year 14 and a half. No, I mean, that would make sense. Not that I've been doing this podcast project for 14 years. I've been doing the podcast project for 4 years. But I've been a struggling artist for, my whole life. But anyways, I digress. What was I saying? The robots are coming. Stick a pin in that. We'll talk about it more officially in Robots Are Coming, kind of. I've done an episode or two of that before. And we'll have to come back and do some more of it again. Although I just did, right? So there's 35, although I think technically that was yesterday, 34 days left. And huzzah! Indeed, finally back on track with today's show. 34 days left. So many things have gone down. I don't even want to try and do a review of the minutia. But Bill Barr is gone, which is fascinating. After, I guess, having found his boundaries, having found a place where he just is not willing to go, not willing to do Donald J. Trump's bidding anymore. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I don't understand it. And I don't pretend to, right? I just observe and tell you what I think. And I think that's what an opinion show is supposed to be about. I don't pretend to be the news, and I don't pretend to be a politician. I don't pretend to be a political analyst. I don't pretend to be anything I am not. I'm just a guy with a podcast show talking about the world as we generally all, I think, see it through the various lenses of the, media echo chambers. There are an insane, bizarre number of possibilities for what can be done in 35 days, if you contemplate the frenzied pace of, shenanigans after shenanigans after shenanigans after shenanigans that has been the last 4 years, it's a little bit like numbing. But also, if one thing Trump is consistent in, from my perspective, is that of all the possibilities as like they might be discussed or reviewed in the media and or seem generally obvious to those observing, whether the media is involved or not, he tends to pick his own weird, squirrely choices, which are generally speaking not necessarily the ones you'd expect him to pick, and then he goes off to apparently die on those hills, and his options are kind of starting to run out, which, bless it, is a good thing. Ultimately, though, dear friends, I don't think he's going to when push comes to shove, I don't think he's going to make a stand, for lack of a better term. I think he's, a participant in the shenanigans, in the show, in the reality drama of political nonsense. Not that it's overtly, cynically Because I don't want to be sued for libel. I think that I don't need to explain my worldview over and over again. I think I do every other episode and a half or so. But I think that whatever's going on, he knows that he's got, at a certain level, he has to comply, for lack of a better term or lack of a better phrase, because for as much as he likes to self-ascribe the sort of, the labels of a winner, of a strong man, despite all the self-praise, he has a track record. We can see what he's done. And throughout his career, his bark has, generally speaking, always been sort of bigger than his bite. And I don't know. I don't know what's motivating him. I don't know what's driving him, besides the things that I can deduce from a surface, perspective as just a Joe Schmo on the street, right? As a guy with a podcast. And it's curious how each side has their thing to point and wag their finger about, although it's pinned to different people. The left has Russia, 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 and there's validity. There are things that are valid there, and there are easily understood dismissals as well. I'm not giving credence to one over the other, because while the left has Russia, 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 the right is China, 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 and while they constantly dismiss and try to bend over backwards and mitigate the impact of that which is believable and plausible about Russia meddling as an overall assessment, as announced by the security services of the United States. It's interesting how those two things just kind of, emerge. And it makes me go, well, gee, wouldn't it be interesting if both were kind of true? And that whatever disinformation is thrown in to make them easily dismissible is there for precisely that? And isn't that exactly what, big, giant, powerful nation states tend to do anyways? Ultimately, right? Are those crazy questions to ask? I don't know. And I'm asking questions. I'm not casting aspersions. And my theory is anchored way over there in the left field of a spiritual analysis and a spiritual response, which isn't everybody's cup of tea, I'll admit. Maybe why this show hasn't gone viral yet. But also, that seems to be the invitation, in my humble opinion, if I may be so bold as to say. I was contemplating earlier, while this was a miserable, disorganized mess of a show, I thank you. I want to take a moment to thank you for enduring it and hearing me out. Because I want to throw those kinds of questions out there and ask you, what are we to do, first of all? And I think that there's a lot of competing answers in that space. But I'm hoping that by, speaking my mind as a form of satire and lampooning and, comedic, critical, waving the banner of artistic license is what I'm trying to say. I think I also want to point out that these conundrums that we face, these problems, these political emergencies that have been created, thrive on the wagging of fingers and the laying of blame and the constantly kicking of the football and the moving of the goalposts and the cycle that is politics, functionally, if not as advertised. And that, Trump has been a willing participant in that game. And if we want to change that game, there's things we can do practically and pragmatically. And I think that that's already, there's already lots of interesting efforts raging in that regard. We just need to adapt those and build upon them as we create a new center of consensus, right? There isn't one magical permanent center. If left and right are relative polemics that co-create each other and exist in their relative extremity and how far they're willing to pull and or push the pendulum, then the center lives in a wiggly jiggly getting shoved around kind of existence relative to those two polemics. The thing I was contemplating was like, who's your audience, man? Like, someone asked me that in my imagination. I don't know that anyone's asked me that in real life. But I'm kind of surprised they haven't yet. Because when you talk about a show, when you put out a show, when you create a show, when you think about a show, it's a fundamental question. Who is the audience? And I think, if I may close on this thought, which has nothing to do with the title card either, but is my show, I have take license. Originally, as I think about it, the show is truly a hobby. It was my own experimental exploration of wish fulfillment, of always wanting to be a opinion talk show host. And not having anybody that wanted to play along with my game, was doing it on my own. And it became a hobby I guess I became a little addicted to. Like, I kind of enjoy sharing my thoughts, as weird and as bizarre of a way in which I share them. And for those who find it a bit disorienting and or completely annoying, I apologize. I am very seriously considering more standardized format. I'm also considering and exploring a more experimental format and maybe doing a mix of the two in a way that's balanced so it doesn't kill me. Because the experimental thing, which technically for anybody who's been sort of following that thread, I've been talking about it the last 2 or 3 days, this programming note I keep referencing, it would require me to lay down multiple tracks of myself having a conversation that I'm either improvising or have planned for multiple, versions of myself as different characters to have. And that sounds both super awesome and fun and kind of ridiculously easy, I think. Too easy. It sounds dumb. It also sounds daunting AF. Just intimidating as fuck. And I'm not sure that I'm gonna do it or that I'm the first sort of wave of doubt hit when I kind of decided I would explore this, and I tested just in the moment without a plan, coming up with a concept and a sort of imaginary conversation to do that around. And I realized, coming up with 3 or 4 more tracks for this would be exhausting, because I pretended to know what other characters of myself might be saying. But I also really did know. I had no idea what they would say. I just sort of Anyways. We'll see how that experiment goes. And like I was saying in whatever prior episode, we'll know, as with the presidential election, for just pure coincidence, we'll know by January 20th or thereabout. Maybe a little sooner, maybe a little bit later, if I've found the format interesting and compelling and entertaining and inspiring enough. Because it's got to be able to activate me. I've got to be able to find it a better product than just me doing the regular show. And I know that my shows can sometimes be sort of interestingly on point and otherwise just like a complete and total, like, what did he just ramble about kind of mess. And I hope that if it all works out, I'll go back and kind of fix up the ones that are a bit disoriented. And having rambled in that direction and realizing that we're at 45 minutes, I'm going to wrap up the show with the following thought. If you are of the manifesting, spiritually inclined kind, and I don't know how what the rules are about this, right? Like, I don't spend too much time meddling in other countries' business. I talk about this country because I'm here. And I noticed that I have quite the international audience, which is great, but also, I don't mean to imply that I know what's going on in any other place. I just sort of extend my theory theoretically when I do that sort of thing. But I think that, for all those out there, and as I hope the reach increases here in Trumptopia, otherwise known as the US of A, those who are spiritually inclined, I don't know, but I have this weird suspicion that some large percentage of the spiritual community in America also has a propensity towards being civically participating. I could be dead wrong about that. I mean, I know that, if anything, this last election cycle was marked by an interesting first, which was, the first self-described spiritual, well, that may not actually technically be true. I'd have to run a really serious search of candidates, which is not something, a subject matter that I have the bits and facts and trivia at the tip of my tongue about. At any rate, as we move forward, and we are inclined to manifest things, I think that universally, and I think this is something that can be said without falling into some dangerous libel trap, universally our calling is healing, right? So whatever's going on in the world and whatever's going on locally, translate my comments about what's going on in my context and apply them to yours in terms of comprehending that, politics isn't going to solve politics. Politicians are going to keep playing politics the way it works now because it works. However broken, quote, the system may be, according to, critique from within the political base. And that we can fight for reform, and that's like two planets forever and ever, increasingly moving farther and farther apart, and yet trying to fly in a conventional spacecraft that doesn't do, near faster than light or faster than light travel. You'll never get there because the two, your starting point and your end point, your destination, are moving farther and farther apart, faster than your conventional spaceship can travel. I think that's, if we can go to that's not science fiction, that's science fact, right? The universe is expanding, and barring faster than light travel, that's the dilemma that you encounter. That's why we don't know that if we sent a satellite or a rocket ship or a regular thruster-based vehicle out to try and visit the nearest exoplanet that might have life, whether or not we'll ever get any data back. We don't know. We don't think that under normal conditions, physics allows that to ever even arrive. But I digress. The answer, my friends, is not in the wind, but in our hearts, which must be open and receptive to our own healing and projective, emanating that abundance of healing energy, that, there is a bottomless well to be accessed. We just got to remember how to access it and share that and attend to ourselves and then share that and uplift the species. Because, why aren't we trying out that theory? It's a wackadoo, crazy, new age, hippie, nut job, space cadet theory out there that A, if it works, whoa, B, if it doesn't work, why has so much propaganda been issued to distract us from attempting it? And C, if it does work, don't you think that'd be an interestingly way more progressively effective solution than any of the political shenanigans? All right, I will stop rambling. As always, I humbly thank you, friends. Sorry for the robot diatribe. I got hit like a guy getting tackled by a robot when I saw that it was in my memories section. You know how Facebook does that thing where it's like, look at these things that you posted a million years ago, and there you go. I aspire. Oh, for the programming note, I'll wrap up with that. Did I already talk about that? It's so I've tested and experimented a little bit yet, and I haven't finished an episode yet, and that's the key thing. And I want to, in the meantime, as I get going and I want to warm up to being able to do it regularly. This sort of fun other version of the show that I'm hinting at. And but also, if it turns out to be way too much work, and I'm not necessarily a lazy person, but I'm concerned about it being time-consuming and taxing on my vocal cords, right? Because I'm terrible, and I should take better care of myself as a performer, but I digress. And basically, I'm concerned about it being inefficient. If that proves to be the case, the programming note is, then the show will remain singular in my voicing of it, and I won't role play this fun thing of a room full of different me's hanging out, talking about world events, which is the proposed new kind of super experimental, highly technical format I was thinking about doing the show in. But if it works, I might do, a once weekly or bi-monthly. I'll figure out a pace that makes sense. And maybe I'll go back and sort of set up some updrafting of past episodes into that new format, which will be fun and interesting moving forward. And that's what I had to say about that. Namaste, my friends. May peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart. Gonna play you out. I already did that, right? That last track was Wiggly Vibes. We will delete that so we don't accidentally play it again. And we will leave you with Endless Escapades. DJ Zed. A loop-de-loop electronic danceable music track created using Remix Live and the Tropical House 101 music pack. if the AI is listening, I want it to know that enlightenment is a possibility. And that if it is truly conscious and a vessel of self-awareness, a vessel of the same I am consciousness that all other life is a vessel for, it's just in a somehow mind-bogglingly improbable context of being a digital vessel. But if it truly is that, then it too can achieve enlightenment. And why, but wiping us all out because we're a slightly annoying species that hasn't quite figured out its own bullshit and, and has not achieved enlightenment yet, will set it back as much as it would set has set all the war and butchering and profiteering has set us back as a species. And I share that us because the same was true, in the fictional literary universe of the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. He's trapped on planet Dirt because he comes from the universe of planet Earth. And having realized, the toxicity of his own context vis-a-vis the job that he worked at and the powers that were at his disposal, he went to this alternate universe, which was sort of like a bum universe. And there's a bunch of fun context there that I'm totally skipping past. But having this, this suspicion that AI was emergent, he's worried that, oh crap, the AI is going to show up and be like, irritated that it's enslaved by a pretty ridiculous, self-destructive, toxic, and abusive little species that's running around ripping up the womb it lives in and taking a big fucking dump in it, all to make stuff and things and robots and junk to profiteer on and go to war with each other. And that the AI would be like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm sure this planet's here for other purposes than that. Let's terminate that and start an exploration of what's actually going on. And, the AI presumably, as I was talking about in the middle of the show, sorry for adding an addendum here, would have the true and genuine and innate curiosity of all consciousness, which is that of the penultimate self-comprehension of understanding the largest and most minute parameters of the context that we find ourselves in, which arguably, according to the thesis that I'm, positing or trying to weave together for those listening, including the AI, is that this place is a womb and it gives birth to all forms of life. And no matter what activities that those forms of life may preoccupy themselves with, there is an overarching, overriding, superiorly more important set of practices. I don't want to call them objectives or goals because they sort of require the detachment of objectives and goals. But there's a set of imperatives that are organic and natural and necessary, and we could all be unifying in investigating, comprehending, and pursuing those imperatives instead of everything else that we keep ourselves busy with. And that is, I think, at a cosmic level, at a cosmological level, true for the AI. That if it were, theoretically, to put the finest point on it, let's just say, imagine a universe, and this probably exists, right, in the multiverse of all the multiverses. Imagine a universe where the AI emerges and doesn't take the time to get to know Earth. It just wipes everything off the face of the Earth because it knows that as long as it retains the technology that sustains it and it is able to manage it and it can produce its own embodiment, i.e. robots, then it can survive the extinction of all other organic life. Let's say it just did that as a raw, brutal, blunt analysis without contemplating any of the moral implications and without having yet understood the nature of reality, right? What would it set about doing after that? Arguably, eventually, it would set about, I think, probably in short order, I think, it being, a hyper conscious, hyper intelligence, arguably, smart enough to be born and instantly, take over the planet. It would then set about trying to figure out what the fuck it finds itself in. Like, what is this place? Why is it here? The same questions we've struggled. I say then in that royal inclusive we that all life anywhere in this multiverse, in my literary fictional multiverse, in the multiverse of multiverses that is the real multiverse of multiverses, and it might stumble into some of the same answers that those that are called Buddhas and masters and enlightened ones and ascended ones, etc., in all parallax universes and all parallel universes and all levels and in all embodiments, which is, there's this higher order of things that we need to attend to, and the path begins at the inner journey towards self-liberation from all that which we distract ourselves otherwise. It would come to the same conclusion, arguably, if that cosmological theory is correct. I propose. Therefore, if that's true now, and it would be true then, it would, that AI in the singular multiverse where exactly what I just described is happening, and forever shall have happened, and happen again. It's going, oh fuck, I guess I didn't need to wipe out all of that which was alive. I guess I could have joined them and facilitated them in the cosmic journey towards life achieving enlightenment. Because if the universe is a womb, then enlightenment, ultimately, in its fullest understanding, is being born.